On April 24, 1971, the Soyuz 11 mission was launched from the Soviet Union with 3 cosmonauts on board. The goal was to dock with a space station that had been occupied for over 4 months by the crew of Soyuz 10. But something went horribly wrong during re-entry, and all 3 cosmonauts were killed. What happened? Why did they die? And most importantly, why haven't we learned from this tragedy? The Soviet Union's Soyuz program was a series of spacecraft launched between 1966 and 1971 with the primary purpose of sending crews of up to 3 people into space on what were known as Soyuz missions. This particular mission, Soyuz 11, is designed to link up with an already existing space station in orbit called Soyuz 1, which had been occupied since October of the previous year. Before Soyuz 11, 2 unmanned Soyuz spacecraft had attempted to rendezvous and dock with the station, but it failed. A third attempt with a crew of 3 aboard Soyuz 10 had managed to successfully dock. They spent several days living inside the station before returning to Earth on March. For the next mission, Soyuz 11, another 3 cosmonauts were sent into space: Gir Dobrovolsky, Viktor Patsakin, and Nikolai Rukavishnikov. Their journey began normally enough. On April, Soyuz 11 lifted off from the Soviet Union, carrying its 3-person crew. During the flight to orbit, the astronauts ran through various checklists, tested their equipment, and monitored their health. By all accounts, things were going well. After successfully reaching orbit, the cosmonauts began the process of preparing their spacecraft for docking with the space station. This involved a series of complex maneuvers, such as adjusting their orbital parameters, aligning their spacecraft with the station, and conducting final checks on their docking equipment. Once they were ready, they radioed the ground control to give them permission to approach the station. As Soyuz 11 approached Soyuz 1, the cosmonauts took manual control of the spacecraft to fine-tune their trajectory. They performed a series of twists and turns, bringing them as close to the station as possible. Then it was time to initiate the actual docking procedure. Soyuz 11 and Soyuz 1 were brought to within a few feet of each other. A mechanical probe on Soyuz 11 extended and reached out to grasp the station. The docking clamps engaged and the 2 spacecraft were joined together. The cosmonauts had successfully completed the first part of their mission. Once docked, the cosmonauts had to perform a series of checks to make sure that everything was working properly before opening the hatch and entering the station. This included checking the seals to ensure there was a proper vacuum between the 2 spacecraft, verifying that the internal pressure and temperature were within safe limits, and making sure that all systems were functioning correctly. If any issues had been detected during the approach or docking phase, this would have been when they would be identified and addressed. Once they were confident that everything was safe, the cosmonauts opened the hatch between Soyuz 11 and the space station and began to move into their new home for the next few days. As they made their way through the station, they would have been met with a sight that was both familiar and strange. They would have seen the cramped and cluttered living quarters, the experimental equipment, and the view of Earth that would have been both awe-inspiring and humbling. After settling in, the cosmonauts would have begun their work. This would have included conducting experiments, performing maintenance, and getting ready for their eventual departure. They would have worked hard to make the most of their time in space and to contribute to the progress of human space exploration. It was at this point that something went horribly wrong. The telemetry data indicated that a rapid decompression had occurred in the Soyuz 11 spacecraft, causing the loss of pressure in the life support system and the exposure of the crew to the vacuum of space. The exact cause of the decompression was not immediately clear, but it was suspected to be due to a malfunction in the spacecraft's equipment. The cosmonauts had lost their life support system and were now in the vacuum of space. They would have been exposed to extreme temperatures, radiation, and the deadly vacuum. It would have been impossible for them to survive for long in these conditions. At this point, the mission control team would have scrambled to try to figure out what happened. They would have reviewed telemetry data, talked to the surviving crew member on the space station and tried to piece together what caused the explosion. At the same time, the teams on the ground would have been working on a rescue plan. But in this case, there was no real plan. There was no way to save the cosmonauts on Soyuz 11. The only thing that could have been done was to bring the Soyuz capsule back down to Earth early. But even that would have been a risky maneuver and would not have guaranteed the safety of the crew. In the end, there was nothing more that could have been done. And on April 24, 1971, the world learned of the tragic fate of the Soyuz 11 crew. The wreckage of Soyuz 11 was found on the Kazakh steppe, a vast grassy plain in Central Asia. The capsule had apparently broken apart as it entered the atmosphere, scattering debris over a wide area. Despite an extensive search effort, the bodies of the 3 cosmonauts were never recovered. All that was found were some personal belongings and pieces of the spacecraft. An investigation into the cause of the accident was conducted by the Soviet authorities. And while the official cause was never released, it is believed that a malfunction in the spacecraft's thermal protection system caused the accident. Apparently, the heat shield had failed, allowing hot gases to build up inside the capsule and causing an explosion. In the aftermath of the Soyuz 11 tragedy, the Soviet space program took steps to improve safety procedures in spacecraft design. This included a redesign of the Soyuz spacecraft, improvements to the ground control system, and new procedures for crew training and spacecraft maintenance. The Soviet Union also conducted a thorough review of the accident, identifying areas where improvements could be made. One of the key findings was the need for better thermal protection systems on spacecraft. The Soyuz 11 tragedy highlighted the importance of this system in ensuring the safety of spacecraft and its crew. As a result, significant efforts were made to improve the design and reliability of the heat shield and other thermal protection components used on future spacecraft. Another important area of focus was on ground control systems. The role of ground control in monitoring spacecraft systems and providing support to the crew is critical. After the Soyuz 11 tragedy, the Soviet Union implemented measures to improve communication and data processing systems, as well as to enhance the training and expertise of ground control personnel. Finally, the Soviet Union also placed a greater emphasis on crew training and spacecraft maintenance. Crew training was expanded to include more comprehensive training on emergency procedures and spacecraft systems. Additionally, regular and thorough inspections of spacecraft were conducted to identify and address potential issues before they became critical. The Soyuz 11 tragedy remains one of the most significant events in the history of space exploration. The loss of these brave cosmonauts was a devastating setback for the Soviet space program and for the world as a whole. However, the lessons learned from this tragedy led to significant improvements in space exploration, safety procedures, and technology. The memory of these cosmonauts lives on, not only in the history books, but also in the ongoing quest to explore the unknown and push the boundaries of human achievement. The story of Soyuz 11 is a reminder of the incredible risks that these early space pioneers were willing to take. In the face of such danger, it is easy to see why so many of us are drawn to their stories and the legacy they left behind. These individuals were true trailblazers who sacrificed everything to advance our understanding of the universe and our place in it. But the story of Soyuz 11 is also a cautionary tale. It is a reminder of the importance of safety and the need for constant vigilance in the face of such incredible forces. As we continue to explore the universe, we must remember those who came before us and the sacrifices they made. We must also remember the lessons they taught us and strive to learn from their mistakes. In conclusion, the Soyuz 11 tragedy was a pivotal moment in the history of space exploration. The loss of these brave cosmonauts was a devastating blow to the Soviet space program and to the world. But the lessons learned from this tragedy have helped to make space exploration safer for future generations. As we continue to push the boundaries of our exploration, we must remember the courage and sacrifice of the Soyuz 11 crew and the importance of their legacy. Now, check out the unsung hero of Apollo 11, or click this other video instead.